evening. Even through the summer, we have been inviting into the studio members of BBC Radio Newcastle's Fans Forum. Now we're going back to our 2-hour format next week, but still just a 1 hour this evening. And in the studio with me, I have got Johnny Greenwood, who's a Newcastle fan. How are you doing, Johnny?
I'm very well. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for coming in, particularly at a rather short notice. You were a late replacement today, so we appreciate it. And Neil Westray, who was our first choice, a Sunderland supporter, he's here as well. Hello, Neil.
Hi, Simon. Good evening, everybody.
Good to have you both in the studio. All well? Enjoying your summer?
Yeah, very much.
Been away, waiting for the new season, feeling up for it?
Yes, sort of.
I sense Neil's more up for it than you at the moment.
I've enjoyed the World Cup. Obviously, it was a great World Cup for Sunderland fans, and yeah, looking forward to the new season. Not much to worry about.
Do either of you ever go 10-pin bowling?
Not for a long time.
Not recently, no.
What would be your record score in that?
May have got over 100 once or twice.
Yeah, I'm so bad that I don't keep scores.
Yeah.
Last night, I got just over 100, 158 I think it was.
Oh, wow.
It was all the group of us went for a 10-pin bowling night, which I won convincingly. We spent some time doing some other sports as well. We did a bit of pool, we did a bit of the cricket cage that they do as well. I wasn't so good at that, but it was all about the 10-pin bowling, wasn't it, Dom? Dom's glowering at me. No, it was a kind of triathlon, and I came second last in that. Dom's told me to mention, but that wasn't the point. It was 10-pin bowling is what it's all about, isn't it, fellas? That's the main sport. So yeah, I've been a little bit irritated by that. Throughout the course of the day, I've been getting a bit of stick unnecessarily because the cricket machine as well didn't work properly, didn't register some of my good shots. That's all I'm saying.
Terrible.
Yes, indeed. But let's move on and talk about important matters, shall we? And yeah, let's talk about Newcastle first because they are expected to confirm the appointment of Matthias Jaissler. Well, imminently. Still don't know exactly when, but we're waiting for that email to pop into the inbox. So that will finally be done and dusted. So yeah, Johnny, are you happy with that appointment? And also share your feelings about Eddie Howe as well, because we haven't really spoken to you since he left the club.
Yeah, I think firstly, obviously, the news about Eddie Howe last week was, I think, a shock in terms of the time of it, maybe not the actual announcement of what the news entailed. I think Howe leaving, I think at the end of last season, I think most fans that I spoke to would have been quite content with that. I think it reached the end of the line in terms of him, in terms of his journey with Newcastle United, and what a journey that has been, by the way. The Cup win, the Champions League nights, the big Premier League games that we've managed to win. It's been absolutely fantastic, but I think it just got to a stage where there was going to be a change in the summer. It was going to be a transitional summer, and maybe he wasn't the right man to take that on, considering he put all his heart and energy in. To ask him to do that again, it just seemed that all parties were aligned that wasn't going to be the best thing for Newcastle United, particularly from Eddie Howe himself, who, of course, we've heard that he decided to let the hierarchy know a couple of weeks ago that he wasn't going to continue on as manager. In terms of the manager that's coming in, Matthias Jaissler, no,
you've nailed the pronunciation already.
I've been listening to you, Pride. That's what it is.
That's never sage advice, but there you go.
I'll be really honest. I know very little about him. I think when the news dropped that we were after the Al Ali manager, I was thinking, well, who's that going to be? And look, I think he will, from speaking to people that are obviously know more about him, I think his intensity is probably the biggest thing that probably attracted the hierarchy to the job.
Yes.
For him for being Newcastle United manager. I think to be on the front foot and maybe to be slightly different in terms of formation. I think Eddie Howe was very, I think engrossed with 4-3-3. This guy seems to be more 4-2-3-1. I know it's a subtle change, but I think it might get the best out of some of the players that we have, because he's still got to try and work out how to get the best out of the likes of Nick Voltemade, for example.
Yes.
And it's going to be really, really interesting, but all the best to him, because it's going to be very, very difficult. What an act to follow, as I said at the start of my answer. And if he does anything anywhere just as good as what Eddie Howe's done in the last 4.5, 5 years, then he would have done just as good of a job.
You'd think he'd get a bit of leeway in that so many high-profile players have left last summer and then again this summer. So it is kind of starting afresh a little bit, with the only players coming in so far being young players that, again, are pretty much, unheard of by a lot of people. So, remains to be seen how well they do and whether they come straight into the team. But that should just give him a little bit of leeway, and fans, you would hope, would be a little bit patient with him at least.
They've got no choice, Brady. They've got no choice to be patient with him, because, like you say, you've lost Anthony Gordon, you've lost Sandro Tonali, you're on the verge of losing Bruno Guimaraes. it is going to be very, very difficult for him. And I think Newcastle fans will give him time because, again, he's a young manager coming into the Premier League for the first time with no experience of the league whatsoever, with a bunch of players that he's had very little time with.
Yes.
And even with players that are potentially linked with Newcastle right now, how much of a say is he really getting in terms of who's being brought in? Because it was kind of described at the start of the summer that Eddie Howe was getting very little say on the players coming in at all, which might have been another factor to why he wasn't going to be in charge of Newcastle going into this season. But look, all Newcastle fans will give him a fantastic reception in our first game against Liverpool, which is going to be highly emotional for all sorts of reasons we know about. So, look, let's just see what happens. Let's give him 10, 12 games. Let's see where we are after that. But I think he'd be quite entertained on the touchline from what I've seen in clips so far.
Yes, and he certainly seems to be highly rated. I mean, we've had experts from Austria, from Germany and Saudi Arabia who've all given us a little bit of an insight into him, and certainly, yes, people are expecting big things from him in his coaching career. He's still a very young man, still very early in that career, but yes, time will tell, and yes, he will eventually be confirmed as Newcastle United manager. It remains to be seen when exactly. If it happens during this programme, of course, we will let you know. And Bruno as well, he's off to Arsenal. I think, we can all see that now. A fee of around about £80 million, it seems. Again, that hasn't been confirmed, so I guess, they have to do the medical. It's probably already been done, and they're just, finalising everything now. How do you feel about this move, Johnny?
It stings. It really, really does sting. I think, obviously, Bruno Guimaraes has been the heartbeat of Newcastle United for the last 4.5 years, particularly since he's been captain for the last 2 seasons. The first captain to win silverware since since '69 and since Bob Moncur. So it's